So we're starting things off with a cheeky Once Upon a Time. We'll see if JD finds a mana dork. Finds a Tamio. That's pretty good too. Alright, so it looks like Juzza doesn't have an immediate answer to Tamio, or is fishing for some more information. So JD is going to be able to build some resources here, although not attacking with Tamio and losing a clue. Slight error. Slight unforced error, but you know, it's okay. We've got a flip Tamio and that's also quite good. I can't think of anything that would play around outside of like Condemn. Alright, so it looks like fetch for a Volk and cycle for a C. So Juzza's got perfect mana going into turn 2. Still no response to the Tamio. So depending on JD's game plan, we'll see if they plan on racing to ult the Tamio or if they want to play for value. The fact that it's ticked up again and didn't pick up Brainstorm suggests that they're going to try and ulti it, which is very reasonable in this circumstance. I'm assuming Juzza's going to surveil here. No surveil, okay. Probably casting something. Oh boy. Okay, so now that this has been revealed, I can happily say that Juzza is on Thoracle versus JD on Walks. This is a pretty interesting matchup. Both players have a decent amount of interaction, but it's not like a dramatic amount. Looks like Juzza stopped at Thassa's Oracle, so I'm assuming he has Consultation in hand. Whether or not he goes for it here is up to him. I mean, the fact that Tamio is there pressuring him might make him go for it. Oh boy, he's going for it. If JD doesn't have anything, they are dead. So for anyone who doesn't know how this works, Thassa's Oracle wins the game if it resolves and you have no cards in library. Is there anything you can... Oh, there's Endurance. Okay. Is that going to be good enough? Does Endurance resolve? If Endurance doesn't resolve... Oh, wow. Okay. Sick. Alright. That's a start to this game. There was a Tamio that flipped immediately. Juzza spent turn 2 and turn 3 attempting to win the game and got Eladam Rizcold Enduranced. So now Juzza has 3 cards in library, 5 cards in hand. JD has 2 cards in hand and a Tamio. And yes, Graham, I will find out. Juzza named Brim's Baron Midway Mobster. I don't even know what that is. And JD wins. Endurance gets there. So JD is up a game in by far the fastest game we have had on coverage so far. I think, given how the decks normally function, these things sort of tend to happen whenever one player feels threatened. So if you think you're going to die to Thassa's Oracle, you're more inclined to go for a Spellseeker or Ephemerate line that might lose to a removal spell. And if your opponent is threatening to go infinite with Time Walk, then you're more inclined to go for it with Thassa's Oracle Consult or Thassa's Oracle Tainted Pact. My guess would be that the Tamiyo Seasoned Scholar threatening to ultimate relatively soon meant that Juzza wanted the game to be condensed, and so he went for a line, and it didn't work out, and so here we go. On to game 2. We might be able to cover the other semis match, because Angus is currently having technical difficulties in the other semis, so I don't even know if they've started yet. We might be able to cover that as well. That was sick. Equal for endurance. What green card did they have? Carver, sure. So in terms of sideboarding, I expect Juzza to bring in some amount of red blasts, maybe some amount of blue blasts, and a couple of ways to interact on the stack. JD probably doesn't have anything high impact that wins the game on the spot, but they do have things like Carpet. Postboard, it should slow down. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Juzza just puts JD under the gun because they're aware that, you know, it is possible to just die. So let's see. We're going into game 2. JD is up a game in the Walks versus Grixis Thoracle matchup. Juzza takes the play, unsurprisingly. Bauble JD. Okay, so no fetch, presumably. Island Ponder makes sense. Yeah, I think this matchup will come down to a critical mass of interactive pieces. Both decks have a fair amount of air, so the Thoracle deck usually plays a fair amount of idiot creatures in order to have a reasonable backup plan, and the Walks deck is full of things like Mana Dorks. So I would say both players are effectively playing with 4 or 5 cards in terms of blowing each other up with their combo. With the rest of the cardboard being relatively meaningless. Opening on a Tundra is interesting. It means either no green mana or no Mana Dork. Probably means a decent amount of interaction. It might have been a Spell Pierce, so this Tamiyo might live. It might also get plowed. Oh, so no swords. Tamiyo gets to live for now. It's possible JD has kept a slower hand without a Mana Dork off the back of some interactive pieces. Equal in response to Tarn. Getting a Nadu, sure. Hey Capers, JD is up a game in the semi-finals. So this, the winner of this will advance to the finals, and the loser will play the bronze medal match for third. So your bet at the start of the day, before the last person who entered the event joined, you said you had your money on JD. And JD is about as close to winning the event as is technically possible right now. So, well done, Capers. Alright, so Juzza's cracked in and has an Ashiok. Okay. This is a pretty big deal. JD has already fired off their Eladamri's Call and is dazing Ashok. Okay, so Juzza has 4 cards in hand, 3 lands in play, and a Clue and a Tameo. JD has at least 1 land in hand and a Nadu. What's the other side of the bracket? It's Jordan versus Angus. Jordan has been on coverage and has been on Esper creatures. Angus has not been on coverage, so I will try to cover that. I won't say what decks people are playing, because obviously one of these two will play one of those two, but all of the deck lists will be posted after the event that did well. So JD's follow-up is a Dork plus a land. So we know they have a Tundra in hand and a Nadu in hand and 4 unknowns. And Juzza's reaching a critical mass of mana and card availability. So I would say he's about 65 at the moment. Unless he blows up. The Bone Man cometh. Okay. I'm not certain how important Emperor is going to be in this matchup. Ah, thanks, Craigs. Yeah, the next one will be next Friday, and then the one after will be Saturday. So the 6th and then the 14th will be the next 2 fight nights. I would love to have you. These events will only be as good as players that we have. This is the very first fight night, and we hit 16, which blew my expectations out of the water. I was expecting 5 players and for me to have to hold it as a round robin, but no, we got a full house. It was great. Alright, so we now have a Tameo and some clues versus effectively nothing. The Walksec does have the ability to win seemingly out of nowhere, and it is much easier to do that the more mana you have. So the fact that JD will have access to 4 mana next turn is quite scary. But I'm assuming that there is a bit of follow-up from Juzza, maybe a Thoughtseize. We've got a Probe, okay. I think Probe is a card where I don't get to see what the hand is. Tundra, Nadu, Forest, Misstep, Arid Mesa, Green Sun Zenith. JD is saying in chat that they F6'd and therefore didn't misstep a Brainstorm. Four mana is 2 Time Walks? Not quite. 7 mana is 2 Time Walks. Time Walk, Eternal Witness Time Walk. Okay, so we have a Fatal Push for the Hierarch, so presumably this is getting misstepped. And then JD is untapping with 4 mana. They have a Nadu and a Green Suns as cards that matter. The rest of their hand is lands. Yeah, awkward hand in terms of trying to assemble combos. Notably, if their top card underneath the Besieger is just Nomad's Encore, game could be over. Just kind of gross. They milled a Besieger. Okay, so Jay is under the gun here. They have a Nadu and a Green Suns. I would expect that they're Green Sunsing here for either E-Witness or Endurance. If they're getting E-Witness, they're probably picking up Misstep. If they're getting Endurance, it's not going to do a whole lot, but it will be like a reasonable creature on the board. Yeah, A-Witness for misstep, that makes sense. So they'll have a misstep now. Juzza is threatening to ulti a Tameo in 2 turns. The Bone Man has no targets in graveyard, in either graveyard at the moment. But Juzza having 4 lands, 2 clue tokens, 3 cards in hand, he could very easily just buy back something with Tameo. So what Juzza goes for here, in terms of the lines he has available, will largely be determined by his current hand makeup, which we do not know. So it's either going to be a very passive line to protect the Tameo and generate value, probably crack some clues, or it's going to be a very aggressive line because he has a chance to just like hit the other half of his A+B and win the game on the spot. If he has Thassa's Oracle or Tainted Pact, for example, he might Tameo for the Brainstorm or the Ponder and just hope to win the game. And if he just kind of has some removal spells, he'll probably just chill out. So let's see what happens here. Looks like a passive line. Juzza's playing Pyroglyph and Thoracle? That's hot as fuck. Hell yeah. So why Ewit for misstep here? So Juzza knew JD's hand from a probe and knew that it was very light on interaction. It actually had 0 interaction. If Juzza's hand is also light and is planning on A+Bing, then Green Sunsing for E-Witness to pick up Misstep stops you from dying to Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation exactly. You are still dead to Thassa's Oracle plus Tainted Pact, but there's much less you can do about that. And if you're Green Sunsing for 3 and Nadu is in your hand, your only options are realistically Morlock, which would have traded with the Bones, E-Witness pick up the Daze or the Misstep. Daze is losing a lot of value here. Or Endurance, which doesn't actually do the thing that you need it to do if your opponent is playing Thassa's Oracle. So that would be why E-Witness or Misstep here is basically just, I don't want to die to this combination of cards, and this removes some of those options. I would still put a fair amount of money that Juzza is winning this game, though. It is possible that JD punks Juzza out with a Nomads, for example. But it's not super likely. Juzza knows about a Misstep, so he probably can't go for the Fatal Push in his graveyard with Tameo. And Tameo isn't going to be able to ulti through a Nadu. Oh, he is going for the push. He's just going to eat through the Misstep, sure. But yeah, that would be why Green Sunsing for E-Witness. The graveyard was just a bunch of do-nothings, really. Alright. Nadu trigger reveals Teferi. That's a really good one. So here comes the Misstep. I assume Juzza has a counterspell for this, if he's going for this line. And then he plans on eating the Nadu with the Bone Man, just to clear it as a win con. No, he doesn't have it. Oh, he just has like another removal spell, sure. That makes sense. So we get another Nadu trigger, so JD has a Teferi in hand, plus a land, plus now a Birthing Pod. Okay. They don't have a 2-drop, so Pod doesn't go get Walk here. Plus they're taking a lot of damage this turn. So the Bone Man will get rid of Nadu, so it's 1 less win con. Pyroglyph will attack for 6. Might not even attack just to protect the Tameo, but I think either is fine. If you don't attack, then you protect your Tameo from removal spell plus Hierarch, because then you'd have to chump with Bone Man. And if you do attack, then removal spell plus Hierarch kills your Tameo. Solitude pitching the Teferi. Okay. Do they have an Ephemerate? No. Okay. Pod to Omnath might be too slow. Because Juzza played this slow and wanted to protect Tameo, it's possible that Omnath is going to be good enough. So be curious to see if that's what JD goes for. They are going to be taking 1 trillion damage to do this. And at that point, the Bone Man can reanimate the Solitude that's now in the graveyard, so that the Omnath isn't safe. So that's probably not the line unless you have a fetch land in play. And even if you do have a fetch land, it's still kind of sketchy. Because you also need other things. Well, here's the pod. This is almost certainly getting Omnath. I don't think it's ever getting Timeless Witness. Is it Omnath try and draw a fetch? Oh, you can get Pyroglyph, that's fair. Okay, so it's JD with 2 cards in hand and a pod now, versus Juzza on 2 cards in hand, a Clue, and a Tameo, going to 3 cards in hand. I think Juzza's ahead by a decent amount. He might have to, like, Tameo for a Brainstorm. He knows the Misstep is gone, though. A pretty big deal. Unearth the Bone Man. That makes a Solitude. It's pretty good. Okay, well. I think you make Solitude here. Unless you want to play around Ephemerate, which is reasonable. I don't think we've seen Ephemerate yet. But if you don't go for it here, then like you're in a similar spot when JD just attacks your Tameo. And then yeah, I guess you don't have to do it yet. But I mean, JD has a pod in play, so you're kind of incentivized to clear this Pyroglyph. Ah, by letting it attack, you reduce the life gain by 1. That might actually be what it is. What is this? Doesn't that... Wait, wasn't there a better line? Couldn't we have just readapted? I think I'm missing something. I don't know what. I think there might have been a little spaghetti. Because if you tied bind to the Solitude trigger, then you guarantee to keep your Pyroglyph. But then Juzza readapted. Okay. Well, now we're facing down a Pyroglyph and an Omnath and a Birthing Pod. So Juzza's probably going to have to buy back a Brainstorm if his hand sucks. Or a Ponder. And just hope to blow JD up. It's not unreasonable. His hand could also just be a bunch of do-nothings. In which case you definitely want to be buying back Ponder or Brainstorm. Okay, we're thinning the deck. We're getting a Swamp out. Presumably for Jace? Okay. I mean, this sometimes wins the game. This Walks deck is so sick. I can guarantee you that you are in the minority there, Capers. For the most part, the community does not like the Walks deck. I personally don't have any grievances against it. Other than the fact that it is objectively too good. Well, it's fine. Oh shit! I mean, Juzza wins if JD doesn't have anything. They do have something? Heat? Heat for Jace? Veil of Summer to cycle? Yeah. Still dead, I assume? Alright, I think we're going to game 3. I assume... I can't think of anything. Yeah, okay. We're going to game 3. Very, very cool. So there was this weird Grixis versus 4-color mid-range game, and then someone died. And that is this matchup in a nutshell. You both kind of sit there trading resources with these random idiot creatures like Tamiyo and Eternal Witness, and you trade some counterspells and cantrips, and then someone fucking dies. It's cool. I like this matchup. I think it's really interesting. But a cast Time Walk. I mean, casting Time Walk would be fine if you did it like twice, maybe 3 times. Doing it 40 times is a little bit more egregious. A little bit. Alright, so we'll see how the players reboard. Juzza brought in Ashiok, but otherwise all of these cards are main deck. JD brought in a Tishana's, which is probably in the sideboard, and a Veil, but otherwise all of these cards are in the main deck. So we didn't see anything too crazy. Alright, so JD will have the button, and we'll get the play. So I think being on the play is less important in this kind of matchup for Juzza's side of things, but it is very important for JD's side of things. And the reason for that is that Juzza's combo is A plus B, and it doesn't require you to have any permanents in play, where in order for JD's walk combo to do the thing, you either need to have way more mana, or some amount of mana plus mana dorks, or some amount of permanents in play that work with your combo, like an E-Witness. So I think the fact that JD didn't have a mana dork on 1 is probably... I mean, it's pretty bad for them, but it depends on their hand makeup. If this Thoughtseize is getting veiled, that would be very, very good. It is not getting veiled. It's getting spell pierced, sure. We're getting dazed? No, we're just going to return to parity, make some land drops, sure. I would assume JD's hand is relatively interactive. They haven't done anything on turn 1 or 2. Juzza leading with a Thoughtseize rather than a cantrip suggests that his hand is probably a little bit more proactive. Alright, so JD has decently good mana here. Juzza hasn't found a red source, and he did play a basic swamp, which suggests that he probably doesn't have another fetch. Whether or not Netherglyph is just going to start cracking in for like 4 will kind of decide how the early game goes. Like, the more pressure you can put on, the easier it is to backdoor your combo in a lot of these matchups. Where, like, if you're just sitting there building towards your combo, your opponent can put pressure on you, so eventually you have to go for it when you're behind. But if you're ahead, you can continue threatening the combo, eating up a bunch of your opponent's mana as they hold up interactive spells, and then get there with the pressure that you're applying. So having a very cheap threat is going to be quite important here, and whether or not JD can answer this in a reasonable fashion, because otherwise you're just going to start taking like 4 or 5 damage, and it's going to be a big deal. Consider put a Muddle in the graveyard. It would imply that Juzza didn't have a land. Does now, either off the consider or off the draw step. This is getting a Volk, and then we can cast like an Ashiok, I'd guess. I think it's Ashiok. Yep. So now we can, if this resolves, we can start eating away. Oh, there's a Daze. Okay. Well, if Daze resolves, then Netherglyph's a 4/5. And see, now we're in the spot where both players are making land drops and jockeying for position and trying to assemble A plus B or A plus C, B plus C. But JD's on a 4-turn clock. And has no pressure to correspond. So things like Psychic Frog, things like Netherglyph, things like Ledger Shredder and Tameo and Abhorrent Oculus, that's part of their power at the moment, is that they're very well positioned in combo decks as ways to apply pressure to your opponent. See, now JD has access to 4 mana, which is a lot, but if they want to play to the board, they have to beat a 4/5. And if they want to go for a kill, they probably have to beat some amount of interaction, and they might not have anything. So if they spin their wheels casting Ponder or Preordain or Once Upon a Time, they're just going to keep taking 4. So we'll see how this plays out. Ghost Vacuum is interesting. I wonder why they brought that in. I guess just for like Unearth and hitting Delirium? Okay. Well, it'll stem the bleeding of Netherglyph a little bit, because now it's getting in for 3 instead. Nethercoif Coat. I mean, the thing is enormous. It's like a Death Shadow on crack. And Jazza's playing a Sanctuary and saying go, which implies that he's probably somewhat ready to go. Opposition agent on this Arid Mesa is either going to be huge or met with a plow. Nope, it got through. Okay. So now we have 6 power in play, and we've Stone Rained the opponent. This is a pretty big deal. I mean, JD is just dead in 2 turns. We could have binding that and kept the land, right? Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, well, we're against 3 power, which is less than 6. 3 cards in hand apiece. We have a Vacuum versus a Nethergoyf. I believe if we tag Thoughtseize, the Nethergoyf is a 2/3, which helps. If this EI resolves, okay. Just looking at a bunch of cards to either assemble a kill or clean up the board or put on a bunch more pressure. I assume JD's hand has something like an Eladamri's Call or an Endurance. It might have... It wouldn't have another Mana Dork. It wouldn't have an E-Witness. I think we would have played that. So it's like an E-Call and maybe a removal spell. And there is an Endurance. Okay. Well, now we can eat the Nethergoyf. And then we can eat it with Vacuum. Assuming this resolves, obviously. Okay. Well, this is a big swing turn. That was a very big swing turn. There is a non-zero chance that someone will simply blow up in the next couple of turns. But we'll see. And now we have a standoff of the vacuums. JD has pressure now. It's not a whole lot. It's a 6-turn clock. But they're going to be pretty well positioned to add to that clock with like a Carvo or something. Green Suns for 4? Getting Omnath, I guess? I don't think of anything else. Well, Green Suns for 4 getting Omnath. JD has 1 card in hand. So if they get Omnath and draw a card, they've already played a land. Which means if Juzza finds a combo, they're just dead. Almost certainly. Because the only 0-man interaction they would have that actually beats Thoracle in the spot is the Endurance that's in play. So presumably, if Juzza has it, he has to go for it. Fine. That's sick. Alright, well, there goes the pressure. And now we're both... Now we both have very few cards in hand, vacuums that can't be activated, a bunch of mana, and no other permanents. Okay, well, It's about as good as you can get. Someone is going to draw something that matters and win the game on the spot. Or, I mean, the life totals are so low now because JD took a bunch of damage off Netherglyph and then Juzza ate 9 for a Fire Covenant. So the first threat that cracks in twice probably wins the game. Because every threat from here will win the game. Like Baraglyph, Psychic Frog, Territorial Kavu. They're all huge and scary at this point. Okay, so Juzza tapped his vacuum, presumably to tap JD's vacuum. That's a lot of damage. Okay. Well, JD has a turn to not be dead. They have 3 cards in hand. I assume they're not dead. That seems kind of unlikely. But it is entirely possible that they're just dead. Is this like a hard cast Solitude? They fetched that land really quickly. I think it's Solitude. Yep. Okay. So JD's not dead to the Pyroglyph, but Juzza's on 11, so he has 4 turns to fight the Solitude. Okay. Juzza's clock's at 2:45. He needs to find... Oh, that's a big one. Okay. Well, this is presumably finding Tainted Pact. Oh, he has a Bolt still in his deck. Gas. Is that it? Is the Bolt good? GG's. Well played. Juzza wins our first semi-finals match 2-1. Grixis Thoracle beating 4-color Walks. This is going to put JD into the bronze medal bracket to fight it out. And I just noticed that this is a thing. Get rid of this. Yeah, so that puts JD into the bronze medal match and Juzza into the finals. So Juzza has locked up at least $125, and JD is now battling for 75 versus 50 in the bronze finals. It looks